Hi everyone, this is Mrs. Jennings with our very first screencast for anatomy. This is Unit 1, Screencast 1, Introduction to Anatomy, of which you will find the information in Chapter 1. Remember, your textbook is on PDF file on your iPad. Now I'm going to try and get this screencast completed in close to 10 minutes, so I may be talking fast, but just remember it's a video. You can rewind, hear it again, you can pause and take notes, you can review it every day if you want to. So just keep up the best you can and go back and review when you need to. Now by the end of this lesson you should be able to differentiate between anatomy and physiology, describe the levels of organization of the body, list and define the 10 characteristics of life, and list and explain 5 requirements needed to sustain life. So let's see if we can begin. Now, when you talk about anatomy and physiology, it's hard to separate the two. Anatomy actually is the specific study of the structure of an organism, where physiology is the actual study of the function of the organism. So when you study the structure of a bone, you also study what is its function, what is its role in the body, how is blood actually cells produced inside the bone. How does the bone, if you're looking at the anatomy, you're looking at how's the bone shaped, where are the fissures or the notches on the bone. So anatomy and physiology, remember, anatomy is specifically the structure, the study of the structure, and physiology is the study of the function. And structure is always related to function. The function of your hand is for grasping, picking things up. It would not be able to do that if it wasn't the structure that it is. And the same with nerve cells. Nerve cells are the perfect shape in order to send signals through the body. So their structure allows their function to take place. Now when you look at studying anatomy, you can actually study the levels of organization of the body all the way from the lowest chemical level, building all the way up to the actual organismal level. The chemical level would be the atoms. Remember in chemistry that atoms were made up of proteins, neutrons, and electrons. And if you bond those atoms together, you have a molecule. And then if you hook many molecules together, you have macromolecules or big molecules. Now the atoms that are the most common in our body are carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, sulfur, and phosphorus. Now that doesn't mean we don't have iron or magnesium. It just means that those are the most common atoms building the molecules in our body. Some of the macromolecules in our body are DNA and proteins, and then lipids are also important in the structure of our cell membranes. Then if you take certain macromolecules and you put them together, you'll have these things called organelles, and organelles will be inside a cell. So the cell is the basic unit of life, and it's made up of organelles. Organelles are the names of the Golgi body, you probably remember, or the mitochondria. If you remember, the mitochondria is the organelle that takes in oxygen, sugar, and creates that wonderful energy molecule called ATP. Gotta love that molecule. So, example of a cell in the body would be a muscle cell, a skin cell, a nerve cell. If you take a group of cells and they work together to perform a specific job, you're going to get what's called a tissue. So tissues are a group of cells working together. And in the human body, there are only 4 different types of tissues. And those 4 different types of tissues end up creating all the organs that we have. And the 4 tissues are epithelial, connective, muscular, and nervous. Epithelial is a tissue found in skin, and it covers body surfaces and it protects. Connective is the most abundant tissue in the body. The blood happens to be a liquid connective tissue, and tendons and cartilage are also types of connective tissue. So connective tissue obviously has a lot of different functions. The muscular system, or the muscular tissue, produces muscles, and they are important in movement. The nervous tissue would be like the brain and the spinal cord is made of, but those tissues are transmitting signals. So if I take 2 of these tissues, any 2, or all 4, or just 3, and they get put together to perform a specific job, you're going to get an organ. Examples of organs could be the heart or the lungs. They're made of connective tissue, muscular tissue, nervous tissue, and they're all working together to, if you're the heart, perform a specific job like pumping the muscle, beating the muscle, causing it to contract in order to pump blood through the body. Okay, so now let's take more than one organ and get it working together. We could have the heart, arteries, lungs. We could have the veins, or we could have the bladder, the kidneys, the ureters, urethra for the urinary system. So you get more than one organ working together, and you have a body system. And if you'll remember, how many body systems do we have in the human body? Remember, we typed it into our pages in iPad. We have 11. Integumentary, muscular, skeletal, respiratory, urinary, digestive, endocrine, nervous, cardiovascular, immune, lymphatic. Remember, those are together. Sometimes just called immune, sometimes just called lymphatic, and reproductive. The integumentary system, I'm going to give you an example of all the organ in all these systems and its main function. The integumentary system is composed, one of the organs is the skin, and it functions to protect and cover. The muscular system, a muscle like the deltoids would be an example, and it functions for movement. Skeletal system would be bones, and it functions for support and structure. Respiratory system would be the lungs. It functions for exchange of gases and movement of air. Urinary system would be the kidneys, and it functions to filter the blood. The digestive system would be the stomach, and it functions to break down foods and to get the nutrients. An endocrine system would be the pituitary gland, the testes, the ovaries, functioning to produce hormones for signaling. The nervous system would be the brain, spinal cord, functioning to send signals and communicate different areas of the body. A cardiovascular system would be the heart, arteries, veins, functions for pumping blood through the body. Immune lymphatic would be the lymph nodes, white blood cells, functioning to keep foreign invaders out of our body. And then the reproductive system would be the uterus in the female, or the ovaries and the testes in the male, and it is going to function for reproduction of the human. You take all those organ systems, put them together, and you have the organismal level, or the organism. Now let's talk about what are the characteristics of a living human, or characteristics that can be found in any living organisms. And in earlier classes you've learned there are 6 or 7 or 8. We're going to go a little more detailed in this class, and we're going to give you 10 characteristics of life. First characteristic is movement. Humans are able to move. We're able to create a motion of the body, or a motion of the organs as they're doing their functions. Responsiveness. Humans are able, because they're living, to react to a change, to respond to stimuli, whether it be from the inside or the outside. Growth. Humans grow. We increase in size through life. Reproduction, able to reproduce new organisms or just new cells as we're growing. Respiration is another characteristic of life. It is where gas exchange occurs. We take in oxygen, we release carbon dioxide. And this is all for the purpose of creating energy. Digestion is another characteristic, where substances are taken in and broken down into smaller parts for the body to use. And when they're broken down into smaller parts in our intestines, we have to absorb them into the body. So absorption is another characteristic of life. And that's where substances pass through membranes into the fluids in our body. And then we have to get them to where they need to be. So circulation is another characteristic of life that will move those substances through the fluids and into the tissues where they're needed. Assimilation is another characteristic that will take, for instance, let's say we eat a hamburger today. It's full of protein. Our body will digest it, break it down into small amino acids. That will be absorbed, circulated to go to whatever tissue needs it. And then we can assimilate those amino acids into our own protein, so we can build it back up into the way we want it. So assimilation is a characteristic of life. And then our last characteristic of life is excretion. Any waste produced have to be removed, and that is a characteristic of life. Now, we are living, we got to continue to live, and in order to continue to live, we have 5 things that are required. Those 5 things, the first one being water. Without water, life would not occur, would not be able to be supported. Water is the most abundant substance in our body, and without it we could not do all these metabolic processes that our body requires for us to do every single day. We also would not be able to regulate our body temperature. That is the reason why we sweat when we're hot. We are removing water, and with water goes heat, and it cools our body off. And then food is a second requirement for organisms. It's the stuff that supplies energy and nutrients and the raw materials our body needs for repair and building. Oxygen is a third requirement for organs. The air we breathe is about 21% oxygen, and we use oxygen, as I said before, to use to create that energy or to release energy molecule from our body to get ATP. And then heat is a form of energy that our body needs so that our enzymes can function and help out in these metabolic reactions. If you're too hot or too cold, this could not take place. So the human's average body temperature is 98.6, which happens to be optimal for the metabolic reactions that occur. And the last requirement that organisms need, such as humans, in order to continue to sustain life is pressure. Pressure is an application of a force on an object. We have air in our atmosphere pushing on our body, applying a force. And we need that because our air that we're breathing is going to move by pressure to the lower pressure. So air is going to move in and out of our lungs by changes in pressure that are controlled by atmosphere. The other pressure that's really important in our body is a hydrostatic pressure, which is a pressure exerted by liquids. Our blood, as it goes through our arteries and veins, pushes against the inside of our blood vessels, causing a hydrostatic pressure, which maintains our blood pressure. That blood pressure is that number they give you when they check your pressure at the doctor's office and they put that cuff around your arm. That pressure is because of the liquid pressure exertion inside your blood vessels. And if your blood pressure is not maintained, you will not get oxygen to your brain, and that would be a problem. Now, this concludes the lesson, but remember, you need to go to the watch summary question form, the WISC online. It will be on sophia.org if you can access it there. If not, I'll put it on as a link on the classroom website and you can go to it. Also, there'll be a quiz tomorrow and you get to use your notes. So if you didn't take any, go back and get some. Also, go to Quizlet.com, start creating your folder of anatomy flashcards, and you can see the syllabus Unit 1 resource area for which ones. And our next lesson will be on homeostasis. And that concludes our very first screencast. Hope you made it through. See you tomorrow.